Welcome, everyone. You're here with the slate, the five candidates that are going to preserve the high quality education that we have here in Manheim Township School District. So tonight, we're going to talk about how you can get involved in Manheim Township Schools, right? And there's many ways. So I don't think it's very interesting for you to watch if we just give you a dry presentation of how this goes. So the way we like to roll, we're kind of a team and we'll bounce back and forth. And we're going to talk about a number of ways you can get involved. And that's going to range from attending school board meetings. You can work to get people out to vote, amongst many other things. Canvassing, there's so many things. So one of the things that I think is a great place to start, because so many of us go and attend the school board meetings now because there's so much happening. One of the first really good ways to get involved in the school is to go to the school board meetings, because you learn an awful lot of what's going on in there. They aren't your dull, boring school board meetings anymore, but we hope to get them back to that. But Joanne, you've been on the board for a while. You obviously you've seen a lot. Talk about what you see first, maybe as a board member, but then also as a candidate or just somebody who wants to get involved, the value of kind of showing up at the board meetings.
The years, I have noticed that anytime an issue comes up that threatens the quality of the curriculum, the education we offer in Manheim Township, parents fill the room. We've filled Convo Hall. I had to find Convo Hall the first time that a meeting was there. We filled the auditorium, and everybody expresses their opinion. So going forward this year, aside from the election, whoever is on the school board, there are some issues that will affect the community. So having your opportunity to come to that microphone and to speak up is critical. So take that opportunity. We need to know where the community is. If we hear from 4 people, then we only have 4 opinions on what we should do. So I would say it's incredibly important to show up when there is something that is of importance to you, and to make sure that that your voice is heard.
So others, Sarah, I know you. One of the things I hear you talk passionately about a lot is you wanted to get involved and you started going to the meeting. So talk about your perspective on that.
Yeah, I got involved because I was watching with bated breath all throughout the pandemic, and I'm so grateful to how the school board led us through the pandemic. But it was really time to go in person and to hear and see, and not just talk yourself, but hear what your other neighbors are saying, why they're saying it, how they're saying it. And I was really impressed the board's procedures for making sure every single person in our community can be heard. So everyone gets their 5 minutes, and I think every single board member does a good job of saying everyone's welcome to speak and we want to hear from you. So that's if you do that, even if you do that 1 or 2 times, the current board members might come down and ask you to run, and that's what happened to me. Thanks, Joanne.
I think, Sarah, it's a really good point, that point about being heard. And I think I want to tie it into what Joanne said. The thing that happens is if only the few go to the board meetings and are heard, you run the risk of this vocal minority being allowed, which doesn't necessarily represent the overall majority of the district. Now, I have confidence in the school directors that they understand how this process works. But the more that you can go out and get involved and speak, right? So the more diversity of thought that comes into the meetings, the better it is. Patrick, what are your thoughts? You've involved in many different things, and how do you see the involvement being of value there in the meetings?
Yeah, no, this is a great question. And I have a similar origin story to Sarah, wherein I spoke at a board meeting and that started my process of getting more engaged and then ultimately running for school board with all of you here tonight. And, I think part of what's so critical, and, from my perspective as a parent, where I have two young children in the district right now, is that we have so many other things going on in our lives, right? Tonight I have two soccer practices. I had worked till past 6 o'clock. There's so many things, let alone dinner and all the other things, trying to keep a clean house, that we all are holding at any given moment. But checking in on our schools, right, is something that is critically important. And that was part of my process. Now, my wife is a teacher in the district. So I have some, I think I probably have a little more of a grip on what's going on day to day before I ran than others did. But going to that first board meeting, hearing what some folks who are showing up there wanted to have done to our schools, be it trying to choose who can participate in our sports teams, to try to choose what books we have in our library. I couldn't unsee that once I saw that, right? Once you see that the issues that maybe we take for granted are very much at stake in this election, I couldn't turn my back on that any longer. And I've seen that more and more with many of our friends and colleagues and parents in different schools across this district, that many of us live here and stay here for a reason. And that reason are the quality and character of our schools. And that is something that is fundamentally at risk in this election. It's something that I know we're all dedicated to upholding the values that we can talk a little more about later on. But generally of supporting our teachers, keeping our students safe, and making sure that we have a strong academic curriculum and extracurricular curriculum to support our children now and into the future.
So Terrence, I think you have a similar story about showing up at meetings and kind of leading you on this path to getting onto the board as well, correct?
Yeah, there's a thread here, right? So I'll bring it back to what you said earlier, Mark, when you were talking about the diversity of opinions, as in people coming to the mic and voicing how they feel about how the school district is being run or what they would like to see changed or incorporated. My introduction was trying to get more diversity among the staff and the administration. So when I first spoke, it was about teachers and administration on behalf of my boys needing, and other students needing to see themselves represented among the power structure in Manheim Township. And as a community, as a county, as a state, as a nation, we're undergoing change. Where the demographics are changing, and there's some resistance on behalf of some aspects of the community. They're a vocal minority, and I got involved because you need good shepherds just for the school system. I will be one of 9, including Dr. Felty, making 10 on the school board. And so it's not a dictatorship. You have to moderate your opinions to get stuff done sometimes. And I don't think that the vocal minority should be showing up at the school board and dominating the agenda. It's fine for them to show up and speak their piece, but as others have said, everyone gets to do that. Everyone should do that. I know a lot of part of why I wanted to join was for representation. Not everybody who wants to speak at the school board can speak at the school board. And having those voices represented on the school board is important. In the meetings is very important.
Yeah, I think as we kind of, Joanne, you have something you want to
I
add
was
there?
just going to say before we leave that topic, to remind people, the board meetings are the second and third Thursday at the district office, which is on the Bucher campus. Meetings begin at 7. The work session on the second Thursday is where you'll hear all of the presentations, all of the details. You'll hear us all ask questions and clarify what we'll be voting on. The voting meeting on the third Thursday is usually a little less informative because we've already done, and we've had a week to read everything. We've already done all of our questioning. It's short and sweet. So depending on whether you want to see the board in action or you want clarification on something that's before the board, you could choose between those two times. And between those two Thursdays, on the Saturday mornings, we have the board conversation for the community, which is a casual conversation. Anybody can come in and out and ask the board members anything they want or tell us anything you want. So I just wanted to be sure we had that information before we left the topic.
Yeah, that's a really good point of knowing when the meetings are. And I think as we kind of close out this piece, I think the one thing that's important as I listen to everyone is not leaving it to chance, right? What generally happens, the vocal minority on a particular subject are more likely to show up. There's passion there, and that's great, right? What we said is that everyone in the district can come and voice their opinion, but it's important that everyone does. So that's this showing up at the board meetings and voicing your opinion is a great way to get involved. So another way that you can get involved is going around the community, knocking on doors, talking to people. We call it canvassing. You're out there, and it's not for everyone. But if we just think about what that is, it's really about talking to your neighbors about issues that are important. Even if it's just talking about, hey, there's election coming up, and we have this right in this country to go vote. Unfortunately, in these type of off-year elections, we don't see the same kind of participation. So even just a big part of the canvassing is just getting people to, hey, did you know there's an election going on? So Sarah, I'm going to start with you because I believe you have a passion for canvassing. So let's hear what you have to say about canvassing.
I do indeed. I followed in the footsteps of the incumbent here on the slate who said this is a really important part, because if you can't get to know your community, you can't really hope to serve your community well. And it's not as scary as you think it might be once you get started. You're really going to tell people that you are committed to serving, and you're hearing from them what's on their minds. And I've had some really wonderful conversations at doors, and some of the other ways of engaging in the community sometimes comes together. Like when I see a little kindergarten student who I just volunteered in her classroom to be their junior achievement volunteer, and she shrieked and ran to get her grandparents to let them know, Mrs. Woodbury's here. So it was just, it's really, these are our neighbors. Every one of these folks is part of our community, and we're here to represent them. So we have to get to know them, and we do have to tell them there's an election on November 7th. There was a time in my life I did not know there were elections on odd years. That time is long past, but I'm running into more people than I would think that are intelligent, involved people, but every one of us in this whole world is really busy. And so knowing that there's an election is surprising to some folks. So it's very helpful, I think. And rewarding.
Very good point. And we're going to talk a little bit later of, in this busy world, we're fortunate now in Pennsylvania to have a number of ways. Like, you don't just have to show up at the polls if you're busy. So Terrence, you talk about kind of really getting around, talking to people to kind of broaden the view of diversity within the district, particularly and those who work there. But so talk about your experience in that vein with canvassing.
Oh, okay. So I'm gonna talk about something else a little bit. I love walking
How about
the
it?
neighborhood. I love walking the neighborhood. I to live in such an affluent community, right? Not everybody has the means, the resources that we can bring to bear in Manheim Township. And I recognize that's a blessing. If you have kids going to school here, you are ahead of the game, right? So my experience with canvassing is, I think Sarah's up there for this cycle. For the last cycle, I was up there as in number of doors we've knocked. But you get to talk to your neighbors, you get to communicate with them, you get to meet a lot of people who agree with you, and you get to meet some people who don't agree with you. I, rather than get into arguments with people about certain criteria, try to find common ground. I'm not running for school board. None of us are running for school board to represent only the Democrats in this election cycle. What we're running for is to benefit the most kids the most ways we can and do it in a responsible way. We're here to protect democracy and the attacks against it, and that's kind of what it boils down to. But when I speak to my neighbors who call themselves Republican, common ground like fiscal conservatism, like student safety. Sarah is a big proponent of that, as we all are, and just the quality of education, teacher recruitment and retention, and the fact that we in Manheim Township have done such a fabulous job of keeping education standards high. Some of the topics that I enjoy speaking to people about. So I don't harp on the culture wars that are trying to make their way into the everyday business of both our community and the school board. And I try to find common ground because that's in globally what we need our politicians to do to benefit all of our communities on all different levels.
I think that's a really good point, Terrence. And, you know, when we talk to people, this bit about, you know, we talk about culture wars and wars where this doesn't need to be and should not be a war. It's really about this common ground understanding. So what I'm so proud of about being involved in the Slate and going out and talking about all five of us is we're for the all, right? And all is not all but blah, 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 right? It's all. And so if you could find the common ground where, hey, most people support, we find all this common ground and these fringes out there getting to that all of why we extend it to the all. And that's what it is a big push for us when we talk about people. And it doesn't have to be contentious, right? It's just who we are, and it's not Republican or Democrat. So Patrick, I'll come to you and then go to Joanne. So, you know, canvassing around, and you do a lot of this in your life outside running for school director. So what are your thoughts?
No, I do. I've been doing this for some time, and I think part of it does feel different in doing this with my my school board election hat on, right? Because there's been so many interesting reactions when we go door to door and have conversations with our neighbors. The one question and answer I get as much of anything else is, oh, I didn't even know there were political parties for the school board, right? And I think that reflects how the vast majority of our community thinks about our schools, right? That our schools are, especially public schools, right? What does it mean to have a public school? That is a school that's based on the community. It's above the ebb and flow of partisan politics. It is a place where ultimately we're about protecting our democracy, creating good citizens who are informed and prepared to move on in their life, both in this community and outside of this community. And to do that, we need to prepare them with an education that is accessible to everyone, right? Extracurriculars that are accessible to everyone, facilities and amenities that are accessible to everyone, not a select few, right? That is core of what we're doing here, and something that again, that's why I'm running, because we didn't bring the culture wars here, but they are here, right? And I wouldn't be telling the full story if we didn't say that those values that have made public education incredible in Pennsylvania, and particularly powerful in Manheim Township for generations, if those values of being accessible for all weren't very much under threat. that is something that's got me up and knocking on those doors on those hot summer days, those rainy fall mornings that we've had those so far. That concern that I have for my own children and for other folks in this community who have a right to have the same schools that we've benefited from in our own lives, that is worth getting up and knocking on the door for. That is worth, maybe getting a little rainy on sometimes. That's worth talking to your neighbor or getting on the phone. That is what keeps us going as a ticket. That's why people are volunteering with us, and that's why we're asking for other people's help.
So Joanne, you've been doing this for a few years, right? Getting out there, talking to people. So talk a bit about one, like just your overall value of canvassing and how what it can mean to have volunteers come in to help, but also maybe what's different now, why maybe it's even more important now.
Yes, I was going to say that all the great points you've made, that's why we are out there, but we're also reaching out to the community saying we sure could use some help. So what we do when we go to the door is say, we're here gathering information as well as giving information. We want to know what people are thinking. Otherwise, just drop it at the door because you're just telling them. So the purpose of someone going in their neighborhood or taking a walk and talking to people along the way, it reinforces for that voter that there's humanity. These are real people. We're not pictures on a card, on a political card. We're not politicians. We are neighbors, and if your neighbor knocks on your door and says, hey, do you have just 1 minute, because we don't pressure at the door, and we don't stand and twist your arm. So if a neighbor can join us and spend a minute at the door, we just want to remind you about the upcoming election. And if that neighbor, that volunteer can say, this is why it's important to me, why I won't miss this election. Even though when we go, it's good to meet the candidates, it's very valuable to have a neighbor come and say, this election is so important that I need to tell you why I'm voting. We also can be a service to voters. Do you have your mail-in ballot? Older woman the other night said to me, I voted by mail before, but I didn't get a ballot this time. And she didn't realize that she had to request her ballot. So I said, oh, I'm ready with Votes PA, go to Votes PA and do it right there with a click. I don't actually use the computer. So I could continue down to the point of, here's my number. If this doesn't work out for you, you call me and I'll come help. And that's a service a committee person serves, and it's a service that a volunteer could serve. Let me help you with that. Let me make sure you have dates and numbers and phone calls and people to get hold of. So it's a service we provide, as well as an opportunity to make clear to your neighbor, the door you're knocking at, why this is an election you cannot miss.
Thank you, Joanne. And I think that's a great segue into kind of the next area that everyone can get involved in. And you don't even have to leave your house to do this next thing. And we're going to talk about now, get out the vote, right? So the get out the vote, and when we were talking about the canvassing there, Joanne was talking about you're talking to your neighbors, right? And there's value because there's some trust level you have with your neighbors. So now when you talk about get out the vote, you might just need to be talking to your kids, your spouse, your extended family, right? But we live in a world at times where that can feel very contentious, right? But if you step out of the issue and just say, exercise your right to vote, just go vote, right? It takes that pressure off. So if your kids are in college, they're not here, how are they going to vote? Do they know how to go vote? Your other family members and friends. And if you just reach out to 5 people and ask them to reach out and follow up, right? Now, we got you covered. And I'm gonna like throw this out to like for those to talk, but we've created a little document that makes it easy, because Joanne just mentioned something earlier, right? The person that says, well, I didn't get a mail on ballot, what do I do? Right? We've created a very simple spreadsheet that you could share. And I was thinking, particularly in my mind, it's helpful with college students because they're like, am I registered to vote? Am I not ready? So it's a place to start. Are you registered with the right places to go? So I'm going to throw it out. Terrence, why don't we start with you on just really the importance and simplicity of people just getting others to get out and vote?
Yeah, it's a numbers game, right? You know, we're trying to protect the democracy, and if you're interested in that, if you're motivated for yourself to go vote, that's the first step. Beyond that, bring somebody. If you're a college student, talk to your parents, start putting a little bug in their ears, encourage your friends. You may be away from college, you may need to get that mail-in ballot started. So make sure you make sure you meet that deadline so that you can vote from college. And have your voice heard. Chances are you live here, your residence is here, your parents are still here, you've gone through Manheim Township Schools, you know firsthand what the school district is like. You know what you would like to see changed, and you know you can choose which side is best going to represent you, which is we feel is the five of us, and we need all five elected. So on November 7th, remember that all five need to get through. But yeah, it's important. It's important because no one else is going to do it. I tell my kids the only time things get done in this world is if people decide to do it. And if you decide not to do it, then it doesn't get done. Anything that's worth preserving is going to take work, and the five of us are about doing the work of preserving what we have here and continuing its success and making it more successful as we move into the future.
So after a little glitch there, when I was looking around, I finally got this little flow chart up here. So this, we will be sharing this out on our social media platforms. So our Facebook page, which is Support Empty Schools on Facebook, and we'll get it up on our website as well, supportmanheimtownshipschools.com. But it's a very simple process for anybody. You can start, hey, click, am I registered? It'll take you, or if you have this printed out, you can use the QR code. You can check whether you're registered. If you're not registered, you can take you to the registration page. Oh, yes, you're registered, but have you moved? If you've moved, go back and re-register. If not, do you want to vote by mail? So like what Joanne was saying earlier, somebody wants to vote by mail, get your mail-in ballot, because you have to ask now. It just doesn't show up. And then finally, check your polling place in the end. So this is where the collective support of everyone out there can really help us, right? This goes exponential if you just keep sharing this with people and follow up, right? Because this talking to your neighbor or talking to your family member or talking to your college student who may just not want to put that little time in because they're busy at school. I know this, right? Just get this done. They're more likely to listen to you than anyone else. And a number of these elections, these off-year elections in the school board, are only decided by a handful of votes. So this is so powerful. And Sarah, you're kind of a data and numbers person. You probably have some of these numbers about how close the margins have been and why this is so important.
I do. So there, folks that have been telling me about all these recent elections, and we do a lot of storytelling and sort of respect the history of where we've come from. It haunts me that an election can be decided by less than one vote per precinct, and 41 votes has put a candidate over the edge in the past. So those 41 votes keep me up at night. they keep me talking to my neighbors, especially neighbors that are parents, that are busy parents that Patrick was mentioning earlier. So I want to put a plug in right now for mail-in voting. And I want to do that by saying it is really, I can't guarantee on one day of the year that I can be somewhere. My parents could get sick. Could have to go to New Jersey, where they live. I work in Hershey sometimes. My child could be sick. If that happens, that was my one day to vote. If I'm a mail-in voter, I don't just have one day. And campaigns spend an inordinate amount of resources, both human resources and money, in get out the vote. But if you've already voted, you also won't get any calls, texts, knocks on your door for people saying, don't forget to vote, because you've already voted. So campaigns will know, you'll know that you voted, and that's a very helpful thing to do, to make sure that you vote and your vote counts, because you'll be able to look on the county website if you do what I do and make sure they've received it, and I log it as that's done for sure.
The other thing that's important to point out is you can get a mail-in ballot, and that doesn't mean that you have to vote by mail. You can take your mail-in ballot, go to the polling place, right, and drop it off and vote live. Or if you're like, oh, at the last minute, I do have it, but I didn't, you can fill it out and go to make sure it gets delivered to the office. So the mail-in ballot does allow you much flexibility. And I think that's a really good point. And I actually think it here recently has become more of an advantage for Democrats for whatever reason, because the other side seems to have created issues around it. But I really think it's great for everybody to voice, and we really do mean that we want everybody to vote. We're not, we believe in democracy, and we believe that everybody should get out there and vote. And mail-in ballot for all is a great way to go out and do that. So Joanne, you've probably seen a race or two through your time. Talk about, like, just emphasize this
Am I
point.
turning gray as you watch every time he says how long I've been at
No,
it?
well, you're like, one of the great things about the Slate is we have this kind of diversity of experience, right? And with time in all these things, there comes wisdom and experiences that not all of us have, right? And so to those who may say, well, what's that one vote that I may get or two? Explain why that one vote or two could be so important.
Back to a race for county commissioner, where the votes were counted and they were even. And the vote was actually decided on the flip of a coin. And Ron Ford was our committee, our county commissioner. So yeah, every vote here in township, you referred to the election of 41. There was another one we lost by 43. It really is that tiny margin. And sometimes when we've won, that margin has just flipped to us. It's always close, because that's where our community is. That's where our registration numbers are. So yes, every vote, just as I said that take your opportunity to come express yourself at the board meeting, this is the same thing. Make sure that if you have a real opinion about what you'd like the school board to be doing, that you express that by getting to the polls. And if I may just harp back to the college students, we want our college students to vote by mail. Sometimes they are, especially in a presidential race, they're sometimes pressured to re-register where they are at college. But unless they're in a permanent address, they're not planning to come home. They want to vote by mail, because you have no idea many times in your college town who's who or what the issues are or who's representing what issue. But you do know here at home, or you can ask and you can find people. So very important that we get those mail-in ballots, but and that we make sure they return them, but that we return them here in Manheim Township. It really does make a difference.
That's a good point, Joanne, the returning them. And that's where the follow-up with this personal touch is really important. So Terrence, you want to add something?
I'll just unmute myself. I just want to say that the application for requesting a mail-in ballot is October 31st. And they have to be received by November 7th. So you want to, and election day is on Tuesday, so you want to get that out before the weekend. So you want to get out the 4th, the 3rd, the end of that at the very latest.
Very good. Very good point. Patrick, what would you like to add to the mix here?
No, I'm glad that we're talking on mail-in ballots. You know, my mother just moved to Lancaster, to Manheim Township, and you know, like many, many folks of a generation, I think can be difficult to get out and about sometimes for her, and so I think, you know, having vote by mail is not something that every state has. It's not something that Pennsylvania has always had, and so using that right, protecting that right, and broadcasting that right is certainly, I think, a thing that's good for our democracy, good for people of all ages, right? All levels of civic engagement. So that can be, you know, working, busy parents like some of us. That can be older folks who may just feel more comfortable filling out their ballot in the privacy of their home. Both things are just as good. Both things are worth advocating for. Both things are certainly accessible and a great way to support this ticket in November.
Yeah, I think the thing for me is that my two daughters both came of age of voting during the pandemic. So for them, mail-in ballots, I could see the future for them being like mail-in ballots is like the thing that they know, right? Oh, what do you mean? You used to show up at a physical place and do something, right? So I think the power of that it just enables people so much more participation, and college students, which we're really focused on getting them involved and engaged. And with the mail-in ballot, we can do that. And with social media and the ways they communicate, you can touch them and remind them and follow up with them to make that happen in ways that were never available to us before. So we've now touched on three big ways. So before I go on, does anyone have anything to add on the get out the vote topic before we move on?
I was just going to say, it's not postmarked, that it has to be physically in the elections board, 5 o'clock election day, close of business.
Very good. That
And
is
I also wanted to say, you don't have to wait till October 31st to request it. That's
right.
the deadline. You should be requesting it right now.
Yeah, let's not like leave. Yes,
October 31st is the absolute last day
Yeah.
you can request, but you can fully request it right now.
So start with your college students now. We know that it may take 2 or 3 times.
One way, the best way also, I would like to say the best way for shy people, I know there are shy people in the world. I don't happen to be one, but there are people that don't like to speak in public, and they don't like to, they're a little reserved, but they, especially if they live on a good street that's very visible, they can put out a yard sign with all our 5 names on it. And that will remind people for certain that, oh, a political sign, there must be an election. I should find out about that. Just as folks are driving by and doing their route to the grocery store, they'll see that. So that would be a big help. And anyone who wants a sign can have a sign. You'll see us on Facebook. You'll see us wherever. We'll get you a sign. Perfect
segue to open this up. So just I'll open this and I'll go to you, Terrence. Is that now? So we've talked about 3 big ways. There's many other ways. Sarah just started touching on signs, yard signs. And we'll just kind of free flow here with now in this portion of our program where you kind of talk about other ways that maybe you personally have affinity to get involved, or you just think it's an easy way for people to get involved. So Terrence.
Okay, sorry. I wanted to say one of the biggest ways people can help us is educate yourselves, educate your neighbors, talk to people about the real issues that are going on. We will all say the 5 of us need to get in. That is our mantra, because otherwise control of the board rests in other hands, that vocal minority and their influence, and books will start to be banned. They won't call it book banning, they'll call it their tagline, parental rights, but what they're really doing is taking away parental rights. Educate yourselves on Moms for Liberty, educate yourselves on the importance of libraries and literacy, for all of our students. And I think where we stand on the issues are not only morally correct, but they're the right side of history. And as we go forward, that's the choice we're making. Are we going to be regressionists and try to move the district and education backwards? Or are we going to make progress for everyone? Do you want for your kids or your grandkids? Because we all know most of the people who pay taxes in Manheim Township don't have kids in school right now, but you may have grandkids. You may have put your kids through the district, and you know how well it has been run, especially under the administration of Dr. Felty. You haven't heard a lot of negative things, because that's what's supposed to happen. It's supposed to be boring. You're not supposed to hear about the school board. You're not supposed to hear about book banning or transits or being sued for this or that reason. You don't want to hear about it, but you do want to be educated about what's going on. We're going to need new buildings. Manheim Township is a growing school district. We're going to need new buildings to house the influx of kids. We're going to need to renovate buildings at some point so that we can maintain safety standards and health standards for our kids and our staff. So educate yourselves. And I'll say the thing that hasn't been said yet, but money. Send us money. We love that. I say that because it costs money to mount a campaign, and a lot of that is getting our message out to all to the households in Manheim Township, so that not only do they turn out, but they turn out and they're educated. They know what the big issues are, and they know what the choices are. So those 2 things.
That's an excellent point, Terrence, about education, and then really the support from donations to help with the education. And one thing that I'm very passionate about is, and you mentioned Moms for Liberty, and you'll hear the word, oh, well, parents' rights, right? Well, the average person may say, well, I'm for parents' rights, but you have to dig deeper and educate what it means. When you hear Moms for Liberty talk about parents' rights, they're talking about the right of one parent to make decisions on changing curriculum or banning a book that affect 99.99% of the rest of the parents, where that's not really parents' rights. Parents' rights is supporting the policies that are already in the district, where if you're one parent and you don't want your child to be part of one part of a curriculum or a book, it's very simple. Go to the administration, go to the teacher, go to the library and say, don't want my child to have access. Okay, great. Child doesn't have access. 99.99% of the other parents still have their rights. Very simple. That's a very clear example of being educated. So Patrick, chime in here. What are some ways? I mean, either expand on ones that are already been talked about or add some new ones.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think, and part of the beauty of our campaign is that I do think that there's points of entry for everyone. And so, Terrence has named it, Sarah's named it already, but, we're the easiest thing you can do is put in a yard sign, right? The worst part about that, and I know it now, is you got to mow around it. Maybe you got to get the string trimmer and you got to kind of work around it, but that's a small price to pay to keep good schools in our town. And that's something that I'm happy to ask you to do. Put a yard sign in your yard. If you live in a corner, put in 2. If you need, you can contact us on our Facebook page at Support Manheim Township Schools, or Support NT Schools, actually, in or check in with us on our website at supportmanheimtownshipschools.com. Those yard signs are not free, but $5, $10, those add up, right? That's not, it's just a cup of coffee, a couple of cups of coffee on the weekend. We're not asking for a lot, but those little bits that you can give to us add up. And hey, if you want to give more because you think we're wonderful, I agree, go ahead and give more. But we're really just asking for, I think small bits of support from people who care about the things that we care about, who care about supporting our teachers and keeping the teachers that we have from leaving. We care about keeping our children safe and engaged and prepared for the changing world that we're living in right now. And we certainly care about keeping the quality of our schools strong like they've been for past generations, our present generations, and certainly it's something that it's worth fighting for the future. So there's lots of different ways you can do. You can support us. Put a yard site in, chip in a few bucks, talk to your neighbor, join us and knocking on some doors. I am a great hang. Guarantee you'll have a great time. Terrence has got a lot of good jokes. We will make sure that you have a great time when you're hanging out with us, going door to door. And then, if you want to help us throw together a mailer, there's all the different ways that we're trying to get the word out. Talk to your neighbors. But this is important. And, I know that everyone's holding so much, that things are like, the world is difficult right now. There's lots of different things moving, but this is worth taking the time to do. That's why the 5 of us are here. This is why the 5 of us are asking for your support.
So Joanne, how would you like to add some thoughts here into this mix?
I want to have some fun with all of you. Like and share. I don't do Facebook, but we're out there on social media. Our events and Mark's done a wonderful job of getting this information out on our social media so that everyone can hear us and be a part of what we're doing. So that's the easiest thing. As you're browsing through, like and share. Send it off to a girlfriend who doesn't always vote, or send it off to mom and dad who always ask you at the last minute, who are we voting for? I say that in jest because, I have to remember to do it, but that's like the easiest thing, but it gets our message out there and gets our faces in front of people. And the other thing, when Terrence is talking about educating, if you are the person who is educated on these issues and you know why you're voting for us, write a letter to the editor, get it out there for other people so they know. Again, it doesn't all come from us. It comes from community members going, I'm voting and this is why it's important. So that also works.
I think those are 2 excellent points there. And I think that part on the social media, there's a lot of ways to engage, not just with us, but others in the community about talking about what's important, dialoguing, not just beyond just the likes on the pages, add comments, right? We're trying to get a dialogue going. Even here, like if you're watching this now on our YouTube channel, subscribe, comment, right? We want to have a dialogue. What we know is we'll record these live and, we have invitations out there, but we know we live in an on-demand world. So, what? I'm a binge watcher of certain shows on Netflix, but don't binge watch all of these like on November 5th or 6th, right? Kind of spread them out, get yourself prepared, particularly if you're going to vote by mail. But the point here is there's a lot of ways to make your points known. If we hear from you, we want to carry those forward, to hopefully when we become elected, we're on the board. So just keep communicating. So Sarah, what say you?
So all of us are involved and busy and out in the community, and there's lots of ways that you can just be talking about this. I just did it, back to school night. You can be talking about this if you go to church. I'm one of the people that goes to church. So we talk about what's important in our community and in our lives, and we talk at the grocery store. We, for those that, go to the grocery store and don't have it delivered. When we're just out having social time, when we're at the kids' baseball game, this is a good topic to talk about. And when people say, which I often hear in the neighborhood I live in, oh, I don't like to talk about politics. I say, oh, me neither. I just like to talk about citizenship. So what does it mean to be a good citizen of this community? And how can we do that together? And how do we need to do that together? So I think that when we don't realize that we're interfacing with our friends and our neighbors on a continual basis and we have opportunities, we just need to take them. And you just need to try it. And you'll be surprised at what people will tell you they're concerned about, they're afraid about. Is it really is it really high stakes? Yes, it's really high stakes. Is it really important as they say? Yes, it's more important than they say. So take those opportunities to make a meaningful connection about why this election is important and why being involved, not just on a one-time basis to vote, but before, when you vote, and after. It's really important that we all stay involved.
And Sarah, I think that's a great way to close this. We had a couple threads that are similar on this, where really the school board and what's going on in the schools really isn't political and shouldn't be political, right? So when you're talking to your friends and family about this, it's really what's best for the community, what's best for the kids, what's best for the teachers, right? We all live in Manheim Township and love this community. And one of the big reasons people come here are for the schools. And we really just want to keep it that way. So really talking about citizenship and kind of just, continuing to keep the high academic standards and the school district the centerpiece of this community and why people come here. We're all passionate about that, and if you passionately speak about that, there's nothing political about that at all, right? It's just pride in this community. So we'll leave it at that. There are many ways to get involved with us. If you're here watching on YouTube, you'll see all the places on social media. You can run into us. On Facebook, we post a lot of events where we're out and about. We'd love to see you, hear from you, and have conversations with you live. So until our next meeting, have a good evening.